Okay, everybody, let's call the Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting to order, Wednesday, July 19th. I have a motion on the minutes. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you so much. All those in favor? Perfect. Okay, first item on the agenda is the extension of contract 6676P supply of hydrovac services. And we have Ben Diaz here to tell us all about it.
Thank you. This time I have nothing to add to the report that's in front of you, but I am available to answer any questions you may have.
All right, that sounds good. Do we have any questions from council? Okay, I have a couple questions. I understand that the city of Richmond has 3 hydro trucks right now. And my question was, given that the contract is $13.5 million, are we in a position that we should think about buying new additional trucks, or is it not worth it?
Through the chair, to Councillor Day, we continuously look at this from a business case side, and we also look at it from a response side. In 2023, right now, it makes sense to remain with the 3 newer units that we have and continue to use a contractor on an as and when needed basis. So when we need to ramp up during, say, an atmospheric river event or something, that leaves us the ability to quickly increase our response and the equipment needed for it. And then we can also maximize the use of our current fleet of equipment.
Thank you. And so we've chosen McRae's Environmental Services. Were they the business that did this prior to this contract?
Prior to the previous 3 years of this contract, hydrovac services were done through an HEQ system.
Okay.
3 years ago, it was we went out to the market and we entered into a contract agreement with McRae's Environmental.
And I understand they're giving us great service, so excellent. All right, any questions from committee? Okay,
motion to approve the staff recommendation.
Moved, seconded? Seconded? Okay, and all those in favor? All right. Number 2 is the award of contract 8148P, the provision of traffic control services. And we have also Ben Diaz here to help us with this one. Did you have anything you wanted to add to your report?
Nothing to add. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Councillor Wolf?
Thanks. Through the chair to staff, just 2 questions. One is for the 3 different companies that are being considered for primary, secondary, and tertiary approval here. Are they all living wage employers, or was that factored in all to the choices?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, did not confirm that they were living wage organizations, but they do, all 3 companies do pay above living wage.
Okay, great, thanks. My follow-up question through the chair to staff is, I've traveled sometimes from Hamilton to Steveston, and I think I've counted more than 4 different companies, logos on the traffic services. So currently, would we expect to see more than 3 at times? Whereas going forward here, we might expect to just have these 3?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, if they're on city operated job sites, it'll be one of the 3 that we're seeing here. If we've hired a contractor to take on work on behalf of the city, they can choose their own contractor or TCP organization, or they have their own ability to do it. So if it is a City of Richmond job where City of Richmond staff are overseeing it and delivering it, it'll be one of these 3 organizations.
Okay, thank you. Then just a final follow-up question on that. When does it get triggered where the city and our own staff cannot supply the traffic management services, where we do have to go with one of our contracted ones? Like, is it for length of time, arterial road or not? What is the reasons that would trip it going from city service to contract?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, just a clarification on your question. You said traffic management or traffic control? Traffic management is where we're putting the plans together, traffic management plans. Traffic control services, so is your question?
I would say traffic management. So like the duration of a long-term project, is it a single day or month?
again, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, if we are putting together traffic management plans for very large events, say Salmon Festival or major shutdowns and stuff, we will use a contractor to help us build those traffic management plans. If they are smaller as in not necessarily duration, but complications of how complicated the project is, we have the ability to do those in-house as well.
Okay, then I have one final follow-up then. We've just ballpark here, for all of the traffic control services, how much are done by our staff compared to contracted staff? Half?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I would say that city staff engage in actual on-the-ground traffic control services, probably somewhere in that 15 to 20% of the total need.
Great, thank you very much, that's all.
All right, are there any other questions from committee? All right, all those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, that's passed. Third on the list is Energize Richmond Toolkit for Community Activation. And staff have a recommendation that we receive this for information. And Mr. Russell?
Nothing to add, Madam Chair.
Nothing to add, okay. Do we have questions? Councillor Wolf?
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, thank you for the report. A couple, I guess, questions and things that I identified. So first off, the actual strategy that starts on all the colored slides, just after the report, on page 34, I think it's called the facilitation guide. It's all of attachment 2, I think. Some of the slides seem to be repetitive. Is that by design? Like I'm seeing some of the exact slides or pages are identical in a few different spots, and some of the slides are actually the exact same heading. That was my first question.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor, unfortunately there were some copy errors, so it's not intended to be repetitive.
Okay, thanks. That will wipe out a bunch of those. Next one I have is one of the pages that did get duplicated, and I value it immensely, was the report on page 81, PWT 81, talks about what the city's doing, which is in regards to natural areas and urban forest. And I know this is for, this strategy is for, a communication toolkit is for everyone, and I value that it's kind of adaptable. It doesn't have to fit a certain demographic. Anybody can get some benefit out of it. And so when it mentions what the city's doing with the ecological network management strategy as well as the tree management strategy, when we're telling what citizens can do, I feel like we might be missing the mark where we could be telling developers this same information. Because it's them who bring forward proposals to remove all the trees and remove all the low vegetation and remove all the soil and all the biodiversity. And then the residents move in and they're now stuck with a yard that is on compact sand. And to try and put in trees to support our urban forest is very challenging at that stage. So question is, will this also be maybe modified or provided to anyone who's doing a building, looking for a building demolition and approval of a new structure?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I mean, those processes are well defined, and I think they're not the target audience in this particular case. You know, if there's opportunities for us to modify the toolkit for, say, strata owners, you know, those are opportunities we can look forward to in the future, and they would likely be different based on the conditions that you're talking about.
Okay, thanks. Next follow-up on this one. In regards to what people can do to get prepared, and I know there's a section here kind of starting on our page 101, what can you do to prepare and reduce energy use? I think another thing that maybe could be considered there is for emergency preparedness. If people were encouraged, I know they get encouraged through other programs, but maybe in this one as well, to have a emergency kit at home, to have water storage at home, to have battery capacity storage at home. And the reason for it and how I think it would fit into this is because if you don't have those things, you now rely on other people to bring it to you, or to you to go line up for bottled water somewhere where you could have had large jugs storage on site. So I just felt like the emergency preparedness component could have been factored in more. Is that just seen as a parallel strategy and toolkit instead of fitting into this one?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I think if it's okay, staff can take that under advisement and be sure that we can find resources and link that to the toolkit.
Okay, that's all, thanks.
Okay, so I met with staff earlier today because I had a lot of the same questions. I was confused what the purpose was of the toolkit. And if you go to page PWT 32, there's a long list of organizations that go all the way to the end. And the idea is this toolkit or education kit will go to these organizations, and then they will pick and choose what parts of this very long report are relevant to their people, the people that they will be holding workshops for, or whatever. Can you expand on that, Mr. Russell?
Madam Chair, so the list that you referred to are the folks that we engaged to understand the unique issues of households, in particular low-income households. So they're advisors in terms of the creation of the toolkit.
Yeah.
And the toolkit will be a broader tool for the community. The intention, I guess the parallel equivalent might be train the trainer concept. So the tools that are provided here, including the PowerPoint deck, would be something that a community leader could use with their community of interest, say a church group or a school group. A teacher might use this, and then it's all ready for them to unwrap and deliver that presentation, engage that community. All the individual resources that are in here, like what Councillor Wolf identified and others that are noted, those could be parsed out and put on the web for information for citizens who are interested in those particular small items.
So these are the building blocks, but you'll be preparing individual information for groups that people who are living in poverty or people who have special needs of some kind. Okay, Councillor Out, do you have some questions?
Good questions. Well, I mean, I like the toolkit. I think it's good, very, very useful. However, I have questions about, for example, the financial impact is none. So, I mean, we don't have to spend money on this to use it or to promote it.
So through the chair to Councillor, this is an update on what we're currently doing. So Council approved the budget when it was brought forward initially, and we still have budget to continue the project.
I see. So we have the money to do it.
Correct. Yeah,
it's not
this
free.
project benefited from a large amount of funding from BC Hydro to do that, exactly.
Okay. My second question is about the name of it. I understand that the term energy poverty has some connotation. So changing the name to Energize Richmond, I think the direction is right. However, I have the feeling that that term, Energize Richmond, can mean many other things. It can be, something like being active in sports. So I don't know, the name, can it be reconsidered, or, what are the other suggestions that have been proposed?
Through the chair to Councillor Au, I think what we can do is certainly as we're supporting the community leaders in their delivery of the training, we can ask that question if this name and title is resonating with the community.
Yeah, because Energized Richmond can mean, we're just be active and moving around. Now, but I think the question that I have most problem with is when this concept of energy poverty is being raised, I think the key was equity, right? There are people who can afford to spend money on energy. I mean, they are using it deliberately. Mm-hmm. And there are people who are in poverty, right? And they spend more proportionally on energy. So I think the key concept is equity. But the toolkit itself doesn't seem to me to have addressed that issue. It's more or less telling people how you can save energy, use less, and save money. But that applies to all people, right? The so-called the rich, the poor. I mean, they can do the same thing. Mm-hmm. But so I think the key concept behind the whole thing, which is equity, is not being reflected or addressed by just providing a toolkit. So are we going to do more?
Through the chair to Councillor, the intention is that, you know, we don't stigmatize certain, residents in the community. So by design, it's been created more broadly for all audiences, but there are definitely some resources in here that do focus on low-income households without really naming it as such. I can't recall the certain pages at this time, but you know, we did keep that in mind and make sure that that component was added. And, you know, through the call for leaders to come and deliver these workshops, the intention would be to make sure that some of those workshops go to those types of households and, you know, they gain access to that information, those resources.
Okay, very good. Yeah, because well, as I said, right, I like the content of the toolkit. However, you know, I hope that the key concept is not being lost, just becoming a general educational program. I think that would not be really what it is we're trying to address. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wolf, did you have a follow-up question?
Yes, thank you. Just to follow up, reminded through Councillor Al's question there. Under the financial impact of none, hearing the reason why, I was just wondering how many community leaders are we talking about here? There is no specified number of them that will likely be hired. And then the follow-up to that, or the second part, is later on in the report it mentions that each one of them, each leader is going to be encouraged to host at least one event in their community. The community, is that they're going to be assigned a community? So even though no one might live in Steveston, one of them will be assigned to do an event in Steveston? Is that how I read it?
No, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, no, that's not the intention. It would be a community of interest. It might be a church group, so a leader there might want to gather a group from that church group or a school group. So it would be their network, if you will.
Okay, then just to follow up, when we're selecting those community leaders, roughly how many are we looking to select, and will we try and identify that they're connected to multiple communities?
That's correct. That would be the intention.
And how many, roughly?
We have to see through the chair to Councillor Day, or Councillor Wolf, sorry, that we have to understand what the interest is at this stage. So there'll be a call for those types of leaders, and we'll gauge the interest then.
Appreciate it, thanks.
We have Councillor Heed on Zoom.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to call out the ridiculous of that question about energizing Richmond and changing the name. That is absolutely ridiculous. I didn't know we had branding experts on council that would talk about this. I like Energize Richmond, and I really encourage you to keep that name because I'm sure you put some thought into that name. But it's absolutely ridiculous. We're wasting our time trying to change the name when you have a good brand for it. I needed to call that out. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Do we have a motion to accept this report for information?
Receive for information.
Okay, second. And all those in favor? All those opposed? All right, that's passed. We have managers' reports. I think Mr. Well, let's go first here. Hi, welcome.
Hi, Madam Chair. Thank you. A couple of updates from transportation through you to committee. The first one is to advise that the pilot project for the delineator posts along the bike lanes on Garden City have been completed. That's the section from Sea Island Way to Granville Avenue. And this extends the project that had been completed last year along Granville Avenue between Garden City and Railway Avenue.
That's great. We've heard from a lot of people that they feel nervous riding there. That's wonderful. Thank you.
And I do have one more update, which is that in response to concerns received from residents for the pedestrian crossing movements at the intersection of Leonard Road and Ryan Road, which is near Bridge Elementary School, temporary curb extensions have been installed at that intersection to improve the pedestrian environment. And staff will monitor that location through the course of the summer and into the fall to receive any feedback and input from residents and the school and determine next steps for a permanent solution going forward.
And I understand that's to narrow the roadway to kind of slow cars down. It also narrows where children are crossing. Is that correct?
Through the chair, exactly. It highlights the pedestrian crossing to motorists by narrowing the roadway and reducing the conflict point between pedestrians and cars.
Perfect. You know, if this is successful, I can see other schools wanting the same thing. And I believe you were in consultation with Bridge School, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, great. All right, any questions? Councillor Wolf?
Great. Thank you, the chair to staff. First, acknowledge the bike lane delineators. I saw them last night along Garden City Road. I used that route many times and felt that nervousness, so it'll be nice to use it the next time. My question in regards to that is, throughout the city we have those delineators. Are they all the same? So when some get knocked out by cars driving over them, which I've noticed there's a few other spots, is it like a one type that we can just get the replacement and they fit back into the base, or do we now have multiple types?
Through the chair, for the bike lanes, the standard for the delineators is pretty consistent, and we do keep an extra stockpile of delineators should one need to be replaced.
Do the bases often break, or the bases are okay and you just have to put in another?
Through the chair, we'd have to talk to our roads crews about the exact nature of the replacement. It may involve both parts, but I'll have to get back to you on the details regarding that.
Okay, thanks. And my other question, which you might be the one to ask, I was at a Hamilton Community Association meeting last night, and they identified something that I had noticed, but I keep forgetting to ask. Is it Ministry of Transportation work or our own transportation staff who are working on the edge of Highway 91? Very close to the Westminster Highway overpass, there's a bunch of trees that have been removed right on the north side of Highway 91. If you know the area, it's just happened in the last week and there's been lots of activity and people are just concerned, like, what else? Are they punching a new road in there into the Queen's Canal? Or are they potentially going to be putting up some sound barriers? Because I know that the neighborhood has been calling for the province to provide some sound barrier in that area.
It looks like Mr. Diaz is going to come forward.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to request staff to
Through the
provide
chair to
information.
Councillor Wolf, we are investigating a failed sewer line in that area. So the work that you've seen with some of the exploratory work that we're doing, we are going to be back in there this Friday night. The work involves setting up a bypass on the pump stations and then shutting down that force main so we can get in there and do a more detailed inspection and then the repair that's going to be required.
Okay, so just to follow up, that's where the trees have been removed on top of that site that's being studied?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I'm not aware of any trees being removed for the work that we're doing. I know we had to do some vegetation removal. I wasn't aware of the removal of any trees.
Okay,
We can follow up after the meeting.
for sure, thanks. That's all.
All right, are there any other managers' updates? Appears to be none, so I call for adjournment. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Perfect, all those in favor? All right, and next we have Councillor Au, who is Chair of the Parks and...
Great. Okay, are we ready? Okay, so I call the Parks, Recreation and Cultural Services Committee meeting to order. I may have a motion for the minutes. Move second, call a question, those in favor, opposed, motion carry. And then our next meeting will be on September 26th, 4 o'clock, same place. Any addition or deletion to the agenda? Seeing none? Okay, so we'll go on with the agenda. So today we have a delegation on the off-leash dog park in London Stearns Park. So we have Mr. Wong, Jackie Wong. Oh, Miss Wong.
Lam.
Oh, Lam. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, Counselor, thank
Okay.
you. Good afternoon, Counselors.
Yeah. So 5 minutes.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you so much for your time today. My name is Jackie. I'm here to speak on behalf of the concerns that we have in regards to the Stevenson London off-leash dog park. On behalf of residents that live on Swift Avenue and Goldsmith Drive, we provided you with a slide of, sorry,
The whole thing.
the little box. Okay, can you hear me now? Great. So if I can ask all of you to follow the slides that we have available up here. We'd like to speak about the concerns that we have and perhaps come up with some contentions and objectives that we could move forward with City Council. We would like to address you with the immediate concerns of not having knowledge as residents of the development of this park, which occurred about 4 weeks ago. And if you follow the slides, we live adjacent to this park. A lot of us who live on Swift Avenue and Goldsmith Drive live right behind the park that's being constructed. And as you can see from the points that we've put up, that there are various concerns in the immediate and future use of that park that we have. Right now, one of the concerns that we have is the noise disturbance that can occur when that park is completed and erected for dogs and non-residents of our community, meaning residents of Richmond that don't live within the Swift Avenue and Goldsmith area coming in. As you can see, the noise component, we did some research here to indicate what is acceptable within a residential community and what is not. We've did our research and we've given you data upon that. If I could ask you kindly to take a read of that. That is one of the important points that we have. We also want to let you know that when the construction started and we did not have knowledge, it has impeded very much so on our livelihoods. People who live right behind the park, for the past 4 weeks, we have not been able to utilize the back of our property for our own personal use, such as having outside dinners or gatherings with our families. The amount of debris and dirt that has traveled through the air has now permeated our entire backyards. We are not allowed to even open our windows if we want to breathe appropriately in our homes because of the dirt that's traveled through the air. That is something of the utmost concern. We have seniors who live in our neighborhood. I personally have a senior who is immune compromised, and he can't get fresh air. He can't even go into his own backyard. And these are paying residents of the city of Richmond. So we have been extremely impacted by this development. We want to stress that fact to you today.
I also just want to add that we have a whole bunch of people, basically all the residents of Goldsmith and Swift Avenue sitting here. And everybody is in agreement that this development is just, it came about, we didn't know about it until a week ago when we sent email to Councilor Carol Day. Just want to say thank you, Councilor, for responding to us. And basically that's when we found out about what's happening in our backyard a week ago.
Yeah, and we are also affected for future. We want council to consider the financial impact of our community, where our property values will decrease immensely due to the park. And so we want to stress that as a future concern or an immediate concern. We live in a neighborhood that is diverse. We live in a city that is diverse. We have new residents within our neighborhood that had just moved in a few years ago, purchasing their homes, looking for a reclusive and quiet neighborhood to raise their children. Now they're being impacted by a decision that they were not made aware of prior to the purchases of their homes, and now they're being impacted. I would like to have council put that into great consideration and have empathy for the residents that live there as well. That is also a part of our slide of concerns that we have. We also want to speak about the proximity of this park to our homes. It is not within the, I believe, the bylaw. It is about 8 meters away from our own backyards, as one of the neighbors has illustrated there for you with a pictorial of his home and the proximity. It impedes on our privacy and our concerns for future use of residents who, once again, don't live in our neighborhood coming in. It leads to possible crime. And we know that that is on the rise in every community, not just our own. So we do have that ongoing concerns as we have seniors who are at home by themselves as their children and their family go off to school and to work. We have that concern. So we would like to have you take knowledge of that as well.
Yeah, just also want to add that there hasn't been any precedent of all the dog parks, off-leash dog parks in Richmond, being that close to the residential area. It just, it's non-existent. The closest one is McKaylan Park, and it's, I think it's 60 meters away. Just the small corner is 60 meters away, but majority of the park is at least 100 meters away. And that would be the closest one. But everywhere else, it's much farther away from the residential area.
We provided.
Ms. Lam, I think you have to wrap up. Your 5 minutes already passed.
Thank you, councilors. Thank you so much. Do you have any
Any
questions?
questions?
Give them staff.
Okay, staff. Any questions to the delegate?
Yes, councilor.
Hi,
Laura?
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming and sharing your concerns, and we are definitely all listening to you. I just wanted to make sure I understood, so the dust and dirt concern is during, because construction just started on this, so that concern is regarding the construction of it, and then you're concerned, is that correct?
Correct.
And then you're concerned that after it's being used, then it's going to be primarily the noise level and disruption of privacy.
Correct. We also, I like to say that after the park is completed, we also have the concern of dog feces and which is already occurring in the park as is. And so we have questions about how is that going to be managed as well.
Okay, I didn't hear that part in the presentation. So, but if there's unpicked up stuff in the dog park, how does that affect you in your house?
It doesn't affect me directly in my personal property, but it affects me as a resident that uses the park.
You would go in the dog park?
If I own a dog, yes, I would go in the dog
okay,
park.
so you're just concerned about the management of. Okay.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
staff could probably answer questions about that later and how if any people go in at the end of the day ever and pick up stuff. I know that when I've used dog parks, when I've looked after people's dogs, I don't have one, but I'll get to that after. But anyway, I've noticed that other people will bring extra bags and pick up anything that people missed usually, but.
Well, the main concern is the proximity to the residential
Yes,
area. It's not.
Yeah, I think we are all gonna ask.
It's not the maintenance and
Yeah, I
management
think we're
of
gonna
the
ask her
park.
questions of staff about how that came about. And, but just about the decrease in property values, did you have any expert opinion on that, or is it just sort of what you assume?
Well, I'm a realtor, and I have been a realtor for the past 16 years here in Richmond. There hasn't been any precedence of the off-leash dog park being that close to the residential area. That's why there's. It's really hard to say, but the best way to kind of figure out the decrease in value is the noise level the barking dogs make are about the same as the busy street. So on a busy street, the property value normally about 10% lower. So that's why how we came up with between 150 to 300,000 is the decrease in value.
I can't remember what was in that exact spot before. Was it just trees and
We
grass?
have pictures for you.
Photos.
We have photos of the property prior to
So
the dog park coming
Kids
in?
were playing volleyball, frisbees, and everybody used that part of the
So
of the park.
it was used.
It
and
was
people were
utilized,
making
it was a green
noise.
space.
Well, not. It's a different kind of noise.
Yeah, it's different. It wasn't being used by dog owners.
No.
No,
Okay,
Good.
thank you very much.
Michael?
no, sir.
Thank you. Through the chair, I do have questions for staff after, but a few for the delegates. Thanks for coming and thanks for sharing these concerns. When I drove past 4 weeks ago or so, it caught my eye that that area that's open and green was going through. I thought there was going to be a building put on it. Looked like a lot of work, and I definitely would have felt concerned around the heat of the time of year, wanting to open windows or get fresher air when the sun is on the other side of the house. And I'm sure that would have been a real disturbance to you, so sorry for that. Also, when you're mentioning dog parks closer than 60 meters, the two that I see most frequently are closer than 60 meters. There's the one out in Hamilton at McLean Park that was just installed, and it's directly across the street from residents. And then there's one at Alexandra Neighborhood Park, which is off Audlin Road, which is a new one installed, and it's like a few meters from the property line.
But
there.
it's not the private residential area. It's the multifamily, which has a different decibel level, and it's a different zoning.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And then my other question for you is if, I know I'll ask questions to staff, but would you, and in here you do call for it to be put back the way it was. I was wondering if you could comment now on your reluctance to see a sound barrier fence put up on that side, or a thick row of trees and vegetation. And I'm going to ask staff, but it looks like from your picture here that right over your fence line is either a trail or some outer gravel strip, and which would make it then harder to put in vegetation. So would you at all entertain a tall sound barrier fence or vegetation?
We are at the utmost opposed to having the dog park in that area. We did provide you with suggestions. That's a big piece of property. Steveston London it's quite a big piece of property. We don't have objection if we can have consultation on another part of that park for a dog park to be built, but we do not wish to have the park where it exists at this time. We are asking that the green space that was there prior be put back in its place for the use of the community. As you can see in some of the pictures, a lot of the kids will come by, they play volleyball, they play soccer. It was an excellent community space for family, and that is our request. But in the immediate, we would ask that there is coverage for all of that dirt, because it does pose quite a health concern, especially for our seniors and all of us.
Thank you. If I may, just one thought more question. I know you're probably not aware of an item on this agenda coming up a little bit later, but there's a sport facility infrastructure list that we're going to be considering for future park projects and infrastructure. And you just mentioned that you want it back to be the green space. Would you potentially be interested, because some work has already been done, that space become somewhat of a turf sport field or other park facility other than just grass?
We as residents will be open to consultation with council and the city.
Great. Thank you. That's good.
Good, thank you. Carol?
Thank you very much. Through the chair to the delegation. When I was in contact with you, and I suggested that you call staff and get some more information. Did you have consultation with staff?
I believe we did. Apologies, I wasn't able to be there, but my neighbor.
Yeah, we had a meeting with with Kevin, I guess, from the city staff, where he explained how this decision came about and what type of barriers and vegetation will be there, but it's definitely not sufficient at all. The way it's designed, the size of the park, it's not sufficient to I mean, this park, it just, I think it's a nuisance, in my opinion, but, I mean, if you look at the photos, you see that it's like right next to the fences. It's, I mean, it poses so many different problems, from noise level to health concerns. I think one of our slides, I think Jackie didn't mention, is the health concerns. It's a huge health concerns when the dog park is that close to the residences.
Okay, so you did meet with staff, but you weren't able to find any compromises.
They were not able to let us know what options were available to us
Okay? And
during
then-
that consultation.
So, because one of the things that I asked you when you phoned was, I mean, given that it's already been excavated, is there something you could imagine that could be there on that excavated section? And I'm thinking like at Minaru Park, there's kind of like a workout circuit where they have all kinds of different up and down and back and forth and jumping. And that's something you could live with if for some reason staff
And
was-
like I said, we are open as a community to have a sit-down discussion with the city, with the Parks and Rec people, and with council on different uses of that piece of land if we are not able to get the green that we had prior. But our ask today, most importantly, our immediate ask, is to cease construction on the dog park. That is something that we are asking grave consideration due to all of the concerns that we have placed in front of you today, and we are open to consultation. We value our partnership with the city. We love the city that we live in, but we want to be able to work with you condusively and appropriately so that all is being served well moving forward. And like we said, we are not opposed to a dog park. We are opposed to where it is located.
Thank you.
Okay, so any further questions? Okay, so thank you very much for the presentation. Now, I know that there are questions for staff, so may I invite staff to come forward? Okay, Bill?
Okay, thanks very much. I thank the delegation for coming here tonight. I guess my first comment would be, I think we need further consultation with the community. That would be my suggestion. I just have some general questions, not specifically about this dog park, but will this dog, first of all, I guess who requested it and why was it going there? Is that part of a plan? Have we seen that plan as council?
Through the chair to Councilor McNulty, this was a plan, and if you would allow us, we have a couple slides to kind of run you through the public engagement process that has happened on this park. It has there's a master plan that was done. There was a approved plan that council endorsed.
We have seen this plan
Yes.
for all the dog parks that we're proposing.
Specifically this one, yes.
So, thank you, Todd.
Maybe I could like to ask my questions first, if I may, thank you. Will this particular park be fenced in as an area for off-leash? Like they have it on Bridge Way and?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, yes. So that's it.
So it would be fenced in?
Totally.
Totally fenced, oh, that's good, okay. Obviously, you heard from the delegation before. Have we done anything? Do we have any answers to mitigate some of their concerns?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we have discussed a few options on site on Monday night. But I think perhaps the best way is there's a lot of questions about what happened in the past, etc. So we have just 3 short slides to explain the past. So when we can get to it.
I guess do we have any rules for off-leash within the parks as opposed to on-leash with dogs in the city? What I'm getting at, I walked down Springfield, and this big 160-pound dog, I'm walking the sidewalk, takes a jump at me, and the guy's got him on a leash. And if he didn't have it, he's having trouble pulling him back. Do we have any rules, that's what I'm getting at, rules for dog owners and dog owners with attitude that I'm wrong, I shouldn't walk on the sidewalk. He has the right of way with his big dog. And I guess that's what I need to do. I don't know.
Go ahead.
Through the chair to Councilor McNulty, part of that is obviously dog etiquette. We do have bylaws in place and or signage in place that says that where dogs must be on leash or off leash. Within our dog parks, they are typically fenced to provide that restriction. And otherwise, if they're in a park, they should be leashed, and then that comes back to dog ownership. If there are problems, then that is where bylaws would be called.
I'm just wondering if we shouldn't, in a positive manner, have some off-leash guidelines or rules that are posted so people understand that if this dog is running all over hell and creating a problem, then here's the bylaw officer you could call. At least there's some sort of safety. In the same way, all I got to do is defend myself walking down the street, and if I'd have been half an inch closer, I would have probably lost an arm. So I'm thinking overall, not, and if I may, because I think since this is brought up, it's a good time to talk about it. So anyhow, I answered my fenced in, I appreciate that. And you've got some answers, obviously, to mitigate some of the issues. Obviously, we're not going to be able to handle every issue, and we have a plan for it. And I guess I'm looking at donors at many of the, depending on the kind of dog, we have different attitudes that owners have towards, and I think we have to be aware of it. And some small child walking down that same street I walked down probably would have fainted or you know, whatever. And it's something, a reaction that is not anticipated in a safe community. So I'm just thinking maybe we should have some off-leash rules and some guidelines, et cetera, to suggest you're on it. So anyhow, no, I'll be happy to see what you've done. Thank you.
Okay. So before I go to the second person, maybe staff, since you mentioned that your slides, right? So maybe just go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So on the screen, you can see basically a very summarized capture of past consultation, highlighted by the years and month. This park master plan was developed for London Steveston Park as early as 2015, and at the time, it was tying with the nearby townhouse development as well along the Matthew Road. City get a piece of land as part of that development, as in that was added to the London Steveston Park. So as part of that process, a number of open houses was conducted in February, March, and April. February and March 2015. At the end of that, in May, staff presented a report to council about the park master plan. After that extensive public consultation process, and council approved on, I believe, the 22nd or 24th of May 2015. After that, obviously, staff has submitted capital submissions for approved funds to move on with construction. So the first phase was constructed. Up to 2019, we have heard more concerns or the request for involvement from the community. So in April 2019, before we implement the next phase of park improvements and development, staff conducted other public consultation sessions with residents before we implement the playgrounds, basketball courts, cover areas, etc. So that went through, and then the park was developed after that. In April 2022, we have included this project as part of the capital project highlights and open house. That was still in the COVID period, so it was only conducted online through Let's Talk Richmond. And then earlier this year, in April 2023, We've conducted both the online virtual Let's Talk Richmond engagement with the Capital Project highlights, as well as the Capital Open House outside in the City Hall. Through these two periods, we haven't really heard any comments on this park. And then just before, obviously, the construction, just similar to every other park construction, we put up site signage on site at the beginning of May this year. In two locations, one in the north side of this constructed dog park and one in the south side, approximately 200 meters apart from each other. The signs are there for the duration of the notification period, usually 3 weeks. And construction started after that towards the end of May. And the signs are still there on site. If you go out and you can check them out. They are a little small, but they are visible because they're in the middle of the open area. Throughout this period of time, we've basically have heard one comment about privacy, and our staff have talked to the concerned residents who emailed in and called in, and after discussing with them about shifting of trees, adding more planting, etc., the concern was satisfied. So construction began in May, towards the end of May. So that was kind of capture what happened in the past in terms of consultation. If we go to the next page, we can see actually the 2015 plan. So this is the approved plan. If you look at all these circular bubbles, you see on the top right corner, a dog off-leash area was already identified in the 2015 plan. And the location of that, if you follow that black leader line, it's pointing at the location which is similar to the location you see on site today. Obviously, there's some minor adjustment due to actual site conditions, but it's in the same area, as you can see on the plan. The next page shows a detailed concept plan for the dog park, which is also visible on the site signs that are erected as of today. As the delegate has pointed out, the edge between the dog park to the nearest residence has an 8-meter buffer, including an existing footpath, which is approximately 2 meters wide, as well as our proposed additional planting, trees, etc. To the other side, as you can basically see on this plan, on the right side, which is north, as well as the bottom of this page, which is facing east, these are where the entrances to the dog park are focused at. And the reason for these locations were because we are 100% in concern of privacy and access. We want to maintain maximum privacy for the nearby residents and having access redirected to the other side, opposite to the residents. Now, this kind of captures the previous as well as the current plan. So I think it provides a good overview of where we are today.
Through the chair to committee, if I can add, you will see along the pathway corridor, there is extensive tree planting, as well as in the dog park itself. The kind of green berm areas are additional plantings and buffering. We also heard comments from the residents about dog waste, cleanliness. As they noted, there's dog users already on the site, and by adding the dog park, we do provide definition of use, and we also will be increasing our maintenance standards, both as far as collection process, the type of containers that go along with the dog park.
In hindsight, I would also just add, delegate was not able to understand or realize the consultation because it was really, in terms of these past 2 years, it was done virtually online, and they were not registered in the Let's Talk Richmond platform, as we discussed on Monday night. And staff didn't go door to door and knock on the doors and ask for opinions. Unfortunately, we could have done that. So I do want to clarify that point, that they were correct, that unfortunately they were not consulted.
Okay, good. So, Michael, you have some questions?
So I'm not coming here all at once this meeting. Okay, I guess my first question, Seeing the second slide that you showed there, that's the city land. Everything else in the park is school district land, correct?
Through the chair, no, Jason, if you could maybe bring that slide back up, we can clarify.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, thanks for the question. If you look at the second page of this PDF, which right now we're looking at the third page. There you go. The whole colored area is City Park. And then if you look to the right side, the 4 baseball fields, only the northeast corner of the baseball fields belongs to the school district. The rest of the fields are also part of the city park.
So the part that's not green, that's just off of Williams Road where there's the parking lot? And then
Correct.
What about that part just below?
That is also city land.
That is city land, right?
That's right. Only the northeast corner baseball field is school district.
And through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the rationale behind that is that there was different phases. So the green area that you see was undeveloped. The shadowed area was already developed. So that's why the master plan was specifically to the green area.
Okay, yeah, because I could see not having the dog park right adjacent to houses. I thought the other option would be just south of the parking lot, which I'm sure it's developed, but it's a grass field, like kind of like this one was. My next question was, what about with dirt being in the air? Do we not have like water spraying mitigation to keep dust down?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, at times we will. I think this year is a very tricky and difficult situation in terms of drought and weather, and we're not able to do that. Also, during the middle of construction, we normally do not do that. It's usually when we're reaching a certain phase, like milestones, that we will do it.
What about the comment that we heard where dog parks are not closer than 60 meters? Could you comment on that? Not close to 60 meters to a private residence.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, as you yourself noted, we do have a variety of locations and styles within the community. Some of them are right across the street from residential or multifamily residences, and in other cases, they're more central into a park, so it does vary.
Another question I have through the chair to staff. I know you've shown thankfully in this where there's a line of trees. This page or the next page show that. Is it at all intended to be a sound barrier row of trees or more of nice looking vegetation? And the other part to that is, do we as a city fund or build fences? So I did see in the picture here they have pretty nice fences in the back of the yard, but they're short and they're not going to provide any sound barrier. Do we do partners with residents to build a fence together or to help heighten a fence for sound barrier purposes?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, in terms of trees, so far the intention is having most of them being canopy trees for a couple of reasons. One is they provide better value in terms of habitat. And second is that, as we all know, most canopy trees would shed the leaves in the winter, so it's a good balance of having shades in the summer, having sunlight, and warm the houses or warm the park in the winter. We could certainly consider a mix of plantation in terms of species, evergreens versus shade trees, as well as under canopy planting like shrubs and hedges. That's number one. And your question about fencing, typically we do not collaborate, so to speak, with residents to build fences. We build fences ourselves. We do have approved capital fundings if we need to increase on that aspect on any side of the project as well.
Okay, and then through the chair, just two more questions, I think. The next one is, I know it's a few items on the agenda from now, but could this site, do you see any other use for it from the priority list of sport facility and infrastructure projects where this exact site could actually fit one of those identified items?
We'll pass this on to Keith for comment.
Right, and prior to Keith's comment, I'll just say that currently the site is an open green area with a few paths going on the east, west, and north side, actually south side. As the delegate has already shown, right now it's been used impromptu as recreational fields.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, this specific site is not something that staff have considered in the sports facility needs assessment. That said as well, locations for each of the projects in the sports facility needs assessment that we will discuss later on have not been confirmed or identified at this particular point, and further assessment would be required for each of those projects, unless, of course, that project is related to an existing facility, and therefore that site's already been identified.
Okay, because there is one that was specific to this park, right? The number 6 on the project priority list was Steveston London Field Softball Diamond. So I don't know if would it be a 5th softball diamond? Is that what we're talking about?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the location of that diamond is near the existing diamonds, and so further away from this particular spot.
Okay. My last question that I guess to stop at this time, hearing that there was lots of information since 2015 and then only one person was opposed, I guess, a month ago, and they talked with the city. Now we've heard this, we've had this presentation today. What would it look like to put a pause on this, send our staff to work on other priority projects, and have that meaningful consultation with this group before going any further? Could we do that?
To the chair, to Councillor Wolf, right now, as we've spoken to the group on Monday evening, the construction has already been on hold. We want, obviously, to get more clarified direction going forward. It could be multiple things. We could continue with public consultation additionally, et cetera, et cetera. There could be multiple approach. One thing that we have also agreed on site on Monday is in relation to the dog park construction, we are also improving 2 other things. One is the park's drainage in that area that is basically completed. Another is some widening of paths, which we are ongoing right now. So it was agreed with the group as well on Monday that we would want to finish that part of the project, because regardless of whether there be a dog park or not, those will benefit parkgoers and residents anyways. And it also would open up the paths for people to use. So that was agreed.
And through the chair to Councillor Wolf, if I can add, given that we've heard from a select number of residents, we would, if you directed us to go back for further public consultation, we would do a broader public consultation process.
Okay, thanks. I'll wait for there's more discussion first before we get that. Thanks.
Andy?
Thanks, and through the chair. Appreciate the presentation and people coming out to express their views. That's good to hear. One question is, where is the next closest dog park?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, the next closest I would say would be in the Steveston Community Park, which was recently constructed as of December 2022. It's approximately in the Gary Street and number 1 road location.
Okay. Now, do we have a policy or kind of a standard operating practice or procedure when it comes to the proximity to homes for dog parks? I've heard different things. There's examples of ones that are closer and further away. Do we have any kind of operating policy that covers off proximity to homes?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, currently we do not have a dog park or off-leash area strategy. We are looking forward to developing that in the next little while. Without that, what we have done so far is to take some reference of 2 things. One is past practice that we have done in the city, and other is to take reference of how dog parks strategies, dog park regulations, etc. Were developed in our neighboring municipalities. So that's obviously when we look further away, we do recognize there are all kinds of varieties of dog parks in Vancouver, Burnaby, Coquitlam, etc., etc.
Yeah, in fairness, it's probably not just dog parks. I think when you look at an open green space in a park that people are used to being a certain way for a number of decades, anytime you make a significant change to it, whether it's a dog park or whether it's, you know, a volleyball court or something going in, I think the public consultation piece is obviously a key. And if you don't get much reaction, you probably can anticipate that you'll get a reaction once construction starts, because sometimes people are busy working and living their lives, right? But that's water under the bridge right now. Just the results of the consultation, if I've got it right, approved in 2015, ongoing consultation, COVID, consultation kind of inconsistent, didn't produce much results until the construction started. Fair assessment?
That's
okay. The trees and the privacy that you showed in the diagram, you know, if this were to go ahead or not, that's another piece that I think there should be a lot of consultation on, because whereas you might think trees are a great thing, that is a western exposed piece of property, I think, or the houses there. So some people might like the exposure they have to sunlight and, you know, that kind of thing. So I wouldn't want to see us just plunk in a bunch of trees of some kind and then find out that the people there didn't actually want the trees. So that piece of consultation would have to be, I think, quite thought out and well done to make sure we're not going to get a second round, if this goes ahead, of complaints about what we do with that. So the last question, I think, is just on noise. You hear a lot about that, and I've dealt with that a little bit in my background. So is there a standard decibel level that we're looking at for dog parks? We're dealing with dog parks right now. I thought it was around 93 or 94 decibels is where you started getting into problems and complaints. Do we have anything that we look at with a dog park when it goes in?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, as I said, because currently we don't have a dog park strategy, so that's not identified. Just to share experience, so far with all 14 plus dog parks in Richmond, we have never received any complaints about noise associated to dogs in dog parks.
Yeah, good. And with decibel levels, I mean, they go up and down. So at times it'll be dead quiet, and other times you might have dogs barking. So I don't know what their level would be. Thank you very much.
Thank you, through the chair to staff. So I have some questions about, this open house process, because I see an issue if the majority of consultation was in 2015. I mean, many residents could have left the neighborhood and purchased in 2021 and not had any idea, right? So, we have to do something very meaningful closer to construction. So my question was, in April 2022, so that was COVID, it was a time of very low engagement at City Hall. I think flyers door to door would have been something very important at that time. I'm just thinking about what would happen if my neighborhood park was going to go in a big change like this, and I just went to go and join the park, and it was completely changed, and I had no idea unless I had done a Let's Talk. It doesn't seem like Let's Talk pulls in enough people when it's something like this. They'd have to go door to door. My question about, I have a question about decibel noises as well, and Councillor Hobbs and Councillor Wolf touched on it, but have you actually ever done do you know what the decibel level is inside a multi-family building, for example, in that proximity from a dog park? Because I think that, and it was a point that the delegation made, is that, a multi-family, it's going to go up, so you're going to be much further away by the time you get to the third floor, plus it's concrete, and they're much more soundproofed living in condos, whereas if you're in an older single-family home, they're designed to have access to the backyard, and they pay the taxes to have enjoyment of that as their space. So they're not designed to be soundproof. So do you know what the decibel level is going into a multifamily dwelling from our existing dog parks?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, no, we have not done those studies. Although I would point out that there may be issues because obviously we would be inside private people's properties, etc. So I think probably a good reference is looking at kind of in general the noise level only.
Mm-hmm. And then when you were designing, because when you look at the design of what it's going to look like, it kind of makes a little more sense than what we're seeing right now with the dirt field right in front of the fence, because you see this nice buffer, and the dogs are going to be a little bit further away than what it looks like in the images that it's at right now. But was that because, did you actually do you know what the decibel level will be reduced to by the time it hits the houses because of the barrier that you're putting in? Because if this 55 decibel noise level is an acceptable standard, then surely you designed it so that it would be that by the time it reached the houses?
Through the chair to Councillor Glanders, again, we haven't done that study, but just to give a reference, somewhere else or elsewhere in the city, we do have park situation where noise is a concern in some sports courts, and staff did put up noise barriers, and it did help alleviate the situation in those occasions. So it certainly is a considerable option going forward.
And through the chair to Councillor Glanders, if I can add, any typical park with any typical amenity that we add, we typically do buffering plantings or enhancement plantings for screening and for shade for the users.
Okay, well, I think that's my only questions that haven't been covered, but I do also have concerns with changing the landscape without consulting the owners, and just with the construction happening during the summer. With the dirt, with that situation, we can't be watering when we're under water restrictions, and maybe we need to put it on pause too.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's easy to understand why, when you see the before and after picture, why people are upset. So this is perfectly reasonable. I'm glad that they all came forward, because we can't fix it if we don't know about it. So I'm glad that these folks came forward. The questions that Councillor Glanders just asked about the open house, I think, are valid. My question is, it's only 10 houses on Goldsmith. Could we not go door to door and invite them? We had an open house on April of 2023. I mean, if this was going to be presented at the open house, it couldn't have been that difficult to deliver invitations to say, regarding the dog park we plan to build behind your fence, you may want to come to the open house. I mean, can you explain why we didn't make a little bit more of an effort?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I think it kind of rooted with the typical things that we do when it comes to adding parks amenity, because this is not a new park, right? It's adding amenity to a park, which is existing. So typically, what we do is we go through Let's Talk Richmond, we put up site signs for 3 weeks, and allow for comments where we have actually contact information on these signs. But I do take your advice to heart, as well as when we talk to the residents, we do realize that having letters sent out and then go and approach them in a more kind of personal way would benefit both them and the project.
Yeah, if we want to have happy neighbors, when you have something this close, the least you do is let them know about the open house in April. I think that would have been, we wouldn't be here today if we had done that. Unless, of course, there are 10 dog owners that live on Goldsmith, and they'd be thrilled to pieces. But clearly that's not the case here. So given the size of the Steveston London Park, were other locations for the dog park considered that were a little further away from residences? Given the size of Steveston London Park, were there other locations that were considered prior to this decision?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, as the project was done back in 2015, I wasn't aware that we look at all the options. The one thing I would point out is that on the 2015 plan, extensive public consultation was done at the time, and different amenities, park functions, etc. were considered and consulted during that period of time. So, for example, there was a lot of positive comments and suggestions for a open green field and mound in the center of the park, as you see on that plan on screen. A lot of comments on playgrounds, covered shelter spaces, etc. Some comments on dog parks were identified at the time. That's why, considering everything, it was proposed at that location and it was agreed at the time. Coming to today, obviously the park is quite sizable. If we need to conduct public consultation, there certainly could be options.
Okay, given that that was 2015, 8 years ago, You know, I think it would make logical sense to just, how many people haven't moved since then? I mean, I think on average, people move every 3 to 5 years. So I think that it would have been advisable to reach out yet again. Okay, so you didn't do door knocking prior, like in 2019 because of, you know, COVID and all that, but it's over, so we can do that today. We didn't do a mail out to the affected houses. That's something that we could have done during COVID. The construction, well, there was a sign, how big, little, we signed 3 weeks before. I mean, unless you happened to be out there walking around, I'm not so sure you would have seen the sign. So I don't know that that was adequate. And I want to point out to Councillor Hobbs, the Goldsmith lots actually have southern exposure, not western exposure. So if you planted trees along there, while that would be lovely for shadowing and whatever, it would also shadow those very small yards. Because if you actually look, they're not very deep. And so if you plant trees right on the property line, they may never see the light of the sun ever again. So I'm not so sure.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, just to clarify, the park is to the east side of the residence. So these trees would be to the east side, so that would be morning sun.
Oh, okay, next time, can you give us a map that's bigger, because I.
Only
just
because the
looked at-
screen is on.
Yeah, because
For sure.
according to this, we were trying to figure out, we couldn't, I mean, it's just really complicated, so we need a better map for
Thank-
sure.
thank you,
That shows Williams, Steveston, because this is the only one I could find on whatever map.
Most certainly.
You know, okay, so let's make that clear, because obviously there's confusion. I don't sit on this committee, so I can't make a motion. But I think that, you know, if the committee members were of mind, I would put a pause on this and have a public consultation, because it could be that people in the neighborhood do want the dog park, but we don't know, because we haven't asked them in 8 years. So I think that doing a proper survey would be relevant. And if in the case that is the case, that people in the area do not want a dog park in that area, could you suggest other options? Given that all the landscaping has been done, I'm thinking about, I mentioned it earlier, on Minoru Park, we have kind of an athlete's circuit where there's like pull-up bars and jump over bars and straddle things so that an athlete could go and you know, and do their thing. Is there any reason this couldn't be converted into something like that that would not involve dogs, but at least the people in the neighborhood could use it for exercise?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, yes, certainly we can consider all these options when we conduct the additional round of public consultation.
I don't think it needs to go to waste. So just I'm not a park planner, so I'm not going to pretend to be. But anyhow, thank you for answering all the questions.
I just want to add that I noticed the consultation theoretically began in 2015. However, I think probably it's not until April this year that the residents would know about this, and there's some kind of a consultation. But it was also being passive, in the sense that they only learn about this by the sign, or you know they can express themselves through as talk, which is not something people may be familiar with. So I think that could be something that we have to address. Now, Councilor Marenti, you have
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to regurgitate and rebuild the park or anything like that. We have a concern here from some residents in the community, and I think it's important we address them, and we look at their concerns and we try to rectify and deal with them. And I would like to make a motion, if I could, that we hold up construction, except where you might have to put water infrastructure for other things in the park to keep the park green or whatever usable, or baseball. And that we ask staff to consult with the neighbors in the next 2 weeks or so, to look at the concerns that they brought forward and try to address the issues where possible, and what options can be presented as a result of what have you, those kinds of options. And I think we need to do that, and we owe that to at least the delegation to do that. And I appreciate the fact that they've come. So I'll make that as a motion.
Okay, the motion's moved. Second.
I don't think we have to I have to speak to it. I think we've gone for a couple of hours. We appreciate the folks coming forward. They have concerns. We also would like to have a dog park wherever it's going to be, et cetera. And it may be there, and it may not be there. It may be smaller, maybe bigger. We don't know what we can do. So I think we let our professional staff deal with it, and we find out from the delegation who the spokesperson is. I think we've got to have somebody. It can't be 25 people. I don't know who you've been in contact with, but maybe the folks behind you can let you know. I see somebody pointing. Okay, well, these are the gentlemen that you're going to be in touch with, Mrs. Lamb, or Jackie, is it? Okay, and we do that. Let's get on with the job and makes a positive solution for everybody.
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, thank you for that. We would just add that we need a little bit more time than 2 weeks. I would say till the end of August for us to conduct.
Well, whatever, I'll give you the time. I just suggesting that we don't put it on the shelf. Folks, we're going to talk to you. We'll make it at your convenience downstairs or whatever, and I'll buy the coffee. Okay.
Laura, on the motion?
I just want to speak to that. I support that. I just want to make sure that this is going to also get down to the bottom of like who wants the dogs there, because I think it's one thing to do a consultation about dog parks and doesn't this look nice and you see it on maps, but when you actually see it on the ground, like, yeah, these are right in front of people's fences, and is it even really necessary? Are there enough people in the neighborhood that really want to come and use this park? So how are we going to re-engage, like, not just the 10 people that live along there, but to find out if it's even necessary, you know?
Your professional staff, let them.
Through the chair to Councillor
the
Durandas, these are questions that we will ask
Yeah.
in the upcoming consultation. So more to come on that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, and, you know, you guys just went forward with what was approved, and, you know, not, you know, just sometimes it isn't necessarily the right thing, right? And we have to give it another look. It's important that everybody loves their park.
Okay. Michael?
Thank you. Yes, I will be supporting this motion that's on the floor. I just had a follow-up question, though. Staff had mentioned about the strategy that's coming soon. So is that through a referral process, or is staff going ahead to create this strategy and then they'll present? And do we have a timeline when that would come?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, that will be done as part of the upcoming Parks and Open Space Strategy. It was council adopted in 2012. It's been 10 years past, and it's about time to update it. So we don't need a referral or anything. It's already on our book. So that's the answer.
Great, thank you.
Carol?
Thank you. And again, I'm not on this committee, so I can't vote, but I would definitely vote for this consultation if I was on the committee. But I would like to ask that if if staff decides to send out a survey to the neighborhood, I think that all of council should get a copy of that survey so that we know what's going out there and what questions are being asked, because I think sometimes the devil is in the details. And then I do believe that this could be a win-win-win situation for staff, for the neighborhood, for dogs down the road as well. And because I don't think that this is a devastation here, it's just a rework of potentially the same situation. Maybe there's a really good compromise out there that we just haven't found yet. And through thorough consultation, I do believe we will find that. And then to the speakers who came and the people from the neighborhood, what this means is that it won't go further than this, okay? It won't go to council because now there's going to be a staff recommendation from the council. So this will get fixed, and then it'll come back, and it'll be another probably September Parks and Rec Committee meeting. So am I correct on that?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, if this motion goes forward, this is considered a motion, so it will proceed to Monday's council meeting.
Oh, it will go to council. Okay, sorry, I stand corrected. So Monday, it will go to council, and then all the council vote on it, and then it would be consulted and then come back to Parks and Rec after that.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, it depends on the motion in council on Monday, what happens on Monday. But as it stands, if this motion goes forward, it will proceed to Monday's council meeting.
Okay, so it goes to Monday's council meeting, then all 9 members of council vote on it, and then at that point, we go to the next level. So we're there. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, now I think in terms of time, because we are not meeting in August, so I think probably, end of August would be the right time.
Next week is August, and.
Right, yeah.
We've got a couple of weeks, so we can bring it back
Right.
first week of September,
Yes, okay, first week of September.
or whatever, whenever, first Parks and Rec meeting in September.
Okay, good, so I'm good.
How are we gonna mitigate the dust, manage the dust now that we're stopping the construction? Because we don't wanna have to water it every day. Are we gonna put tarps down or something?
We will have to go back and discuss with our construction crew about what is the best practice, most effective way, etc.
But if I can add to that through the chair to Councillor Glanders, given that we will not be doing any more construction on the majority of the site, there should be very limited dust. If we are still doing some works, i.e. on the pathway or the drainage system, we will do some additional measures.
Yeah, but it's gonna get drier and drier, right? And so if it's already just a dust field and if there is some sort of a wind event, right? I'm just concerned about the air quality.
Correct, yeah. We'll look for ways to see if we can mitigate the effect.
First thing. Yeah, but it'll just dry up. Like you'll have to do that every single day, all day long, watering it. You're gonna have to cover it up.
Yeah, I think staff will take care of that.
Yeah, like
Okay.
urgently.
Yeah, so I'm going to call. Oh, Michael?
Thank you. Just to clarify, because we don't have the motion in front of us, could I ask for maybe a friendly amendment, if it's not already there, that this committee gets an update at our next meeting, which is September 26th, so that if this, whatever we do today goes to council and it gets approved, we don't need to have someone add it at council. So it will be on the September agenda. Okay, thank you.
Elizabeth?
If I may, I think we do need to look at the time that it will take to do this engagement process, and I'm not trying to delay things, but our September reports are due in August. And so for us to get out in a meaningful way, we would happily give you an update in September. In all reality, it's probably October before we're bringing you a full report back. I just want to give us an update. We can certainly do that, a verbal update.
No problem.
Okay, good. So it's clear. Okay, so I'm going to call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carry. Thank you very much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Okay, now we go on to item number 1, potential enhancements to the railway greenway. So,
Nothing to add. Happy to answer any questions.
okay, any questions? Michael? Oh, Laura.
You know what, I have more of a comment. So maybe I don't even need to speak yet. Or I just wanted to, I don't know, never mind. I'll make a comment after.
Okay. Michael? Question?
Thank you. Yes, I do have a question. I guess I'll start with one thing. We received some public correspondence on this issue today. I'm not sure if staff have had a chance to read it over. It's from Mr. Evan Dunphy. And there were 2 suggestions in the letter there which I would agree with. The first one would call for no more right turns on red at the perpendicular roads with a railway. Listed here are Blundell, Francis, Princeton, Williams and Steveston and Gary. Would staff have a comment on that? So would all of those be suitable to enforce or to change to a no more right turn? Then I have a second question about the second point.
Okay, I think the questions would be more appropriate for the public works and the transportation to address instead of here. Okay, so I would suggest that, we confine to the report itself, and for this letter, we refer it to the other committee.
Even though we have transportation staff here who could answer? I don't know.
No, I think.
That's why I'm asking it, because our transportation director was here. Okay, if not, then that would mean it can't be asked until September. Or I guess it could be asked when this goes to council, right? Because this would be, if this is approved, then it goes to council, and then the questions could be asked about transportation then. Okay, then we'll ask specifically about this one. Does staff have any comments on the potential lighting strategy, which is at the bottom of page 11, which PBX calls for 166 light poles at that height of 4.5 0.57 meters with that 30-meter spacing. And then there's that table that goes with it. Could staff actually give a comment on, is that what, would that meet it? Or could we do less lighting and still meet the satisfactory? I know there's more consultation going through here. We're gonna do Let's Talk, all that stuff. But like, what's staff's initial take on that proposal of 166 light poles?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the 166 pole suggestion is across 5 blocks, total 3 point something to 4 kilometers. So it's actually a very long and substantial length. So staff has worked with the consultant. We didn't just ask for a report, right? So the staff would agree with, in terms of providing consistent 5 lux or above lighting, that is the required, and that is the most efficient way to provide lighting. There will be certainly different alternatives, but it would get to different results, different objectives, and all those should committee and council approve us to move forward with public consultation. We would ask those questions to the public.
Okay, just to follow up, do we have this exact type of light pole and height somewhere already in the city?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, if you look at Aberdeen Park, those lights are very similar, 4.5 meter high, etc.
And the brightness factor is same, everything in Aberdeen Park? Okay, I'll check that. I had one more for now. Yeah, around the ecological impact. So this multi-use pathway is a different type of corridor because it's not just about getting people using modes of recreation or modes of transportation to go from A to B. It does provide the community gardens. It provides wide green space. It provides existing tree retention areas. So what's staff's maybe comparison? Do we have another one? Are we maybe looking at the Alderbridge Way multi-use pathway, which has a natural area to the north of it? Because there we haven't added lights to the same degree, or because they get the effect of the street light bleeds into that one at Alderbridge, but not here. So is this really a kind of the top ecological multi-use pathway that provides ecological benefit? Is this like?
To the chair to Councillor Wolf, this report directly responds to the request from the previous delegate. That's why we only conducted on the Railway Greenway. Should future evidence shows that other greenways, other trails also require similar studies, we staff conduct that as well.
Okay, look forward to that. Thanks.
Okay, Laura?
I can ask a quick question, and then I'll make my comments after. I just wanted to confirm, on Railway, there is a sidewalk.
Correct.
And bi-directional bike lanes that are lit up by the road. So at night, when it's dark, if you didn't want to use the multi-use path, you can walk on a lit up sidewalk and ride on a bike lane.
That is correct.
But the sidewalk's only on the east side of the road?
That is correct.
Correct, okay. I just wanted to make sure that I knew that.
Okay, good. No further questions? So staff have a recommendation. Do you have a mover? Move. Second. Call the question. Those in favor? Oh, Andy?
I can just make my comments.
Okay, sure, thanks. Oh. Mr. Chair, is it me or Laura? I don't know.
Andy.
Okay, thanks, and through the chair, and Laura will be next, I'm sure. Yeah, thanks for the report. I remember Mr. Krieger's presentation, and he made some very valid points, and his, I think, were mostly about public safety and a couple of the particular spots on the Greenway that were dark. And I actually agree with him on that. So from a public safety point of view, I think it's good that we act proactively. I'm going to support the recommendation to start consultation and go out and find out what the best solutions are. So there's no problem with that. And we'll get into the right turn issue on streets later on, I'm sure. But one comment I'll make is I don't think his point, and I don't think what we want to create is some lit up Broadway on the Greenway. I think the consultation will bear it out, and it's very important to do that. But I hope what we end up with is some lighting in key spots where it's darker than other spots. And again, it's one of these things with the neighborhood to the west of it. I think I'm getting my directions right this time, to the west of it. You'll probably have some comments from them again if we start putting in too many lights and everything else. So light pollution, as you mentioned in the report, that's a real concern for people. So I look forward to seeing what you come back with. Totally support the recommendation, and I think we should be strategic about it where we place the lights, as Mr. Krieger pointed out in his delegation. Thank you very much.
Good. Nora?
Thank you through the chair, and I just want to make a comment too that I was really appreciative of this really in-depth report and the recommendation to have a broad consultation. I think it's so important that we don't just run with an idea without looking at the full impact. I have huge concerns about light pollution and impacts on ecology, and it sounds like you're totally on top of that. So definitely in favor of public consultation, and I totally agree with Councillor Hobbs's comments on just in the key areas, especially since there's alternative transportation down on the sidewalk at night. It'd be nice to be able to use the path in the evening as well, but given that there's residents all along there, they're not gonna, like, I was very upset when my beautiful halogen light got changed to the LED one, and it was like there was a full moon in my living room every night now, and it's a shock, you know, and we have bats and all sorts of things, so we really have to balance those needs.
Michael?
Thank you. Just one comment in regards to our last item we just heard from residents who felt like they were informed, and we just talked about making sure we get door-to-door invitations to them. Will some part of this public consultation involve door-to-door invitations to all properties that back on to the railway agreement?
Great.
Good. Okay, no further comments. So I call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. So moving on to item number 2, Richmond Sports Facility Needs Assessment 2023 update. Anything to add to the report?
Nothing further to add to the report, though I would like to give a few introductory remarks.
Okay, good.
The Sports Facility Needs Assessment has been a comprehensive process that has involved extensive consultation with Richmond sports groups and the Richmond Sports Council. The result of this process is a list of 14 prioritized projects that have been endorsed by the Facilities Task Force that included members from the Richmond Sports Council, Richmond Sport Hosting, and the Richmond School District and city staff. Staff are recommending 6 priority projects that, with council's endorsement, will move forward in future corporate facility and park plans over the next 1 to 10 years. Moving forward with these priority projects will allow the city to meet the sport facility and infrastructure needs of Richmond residents and contribute to the city's recreation and sports strategy vision of being a leader in the planning and delivery of recreation and sport opportunities. Staff are happy to answer any questions about the report.
Any questions? Laura?
Thank you, through the chair. I have a few questions. Thank you very much for this. So the outdoor pickleball courts, this is going to be sort of a purpose-built pickleball venue. It's not saying there's going to be 9 courts here and there. This is like one big facility.
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, specific locations, including the number of courts at those locations, have not been fully determined. Further assessment would be required to determine site locations. That would involve public consultation, and ultimately then a recommendation could be brought forward.
Okay, so it could be in a bunch of different places. So I just want to point out, I know that Burkeville really wants to expand their pickleball community, or some people there do, maybe on the tennis courts, and changing some of them to pickleball or having conversion. They did talk about converting an old hockey box to pickleball courts, but after we received some letters from the public about if a pickleball use is so trendy right now that then they're always using the hockey box, and people that liked to go out and practice street hockey can't anymore, then I am concerned about continuing on with that process. I think we need to have separate facilities and keep the hockey boxes. So just putting that under advisement. I have a question about the baseball and softball infield with portable mound, full-size backstop and fencing. I was involved in baseball last year and talking to the baseball people in our community. My because there's issues at Gibbons Park as well, in that the old, very cute manual signboard that we have to use, it's not functional. Like my kid played baseball last year, and when the wind's blowing, it blows the numbers right off, and you have to be up there with this hook thing and just keep putting them back up, and it's hilarious. And we compare it to New Westminster and these other, they all have electronic signboards on their facilities now, and we want to be able to host baseball there and be like, it's a great little venue. But I asked, like, how important is the Gibbons upgrades? And they said, you know what, the Palmer one is the most important, because this is where they want to do all the baseball, and that Palmer has some upcoming really important baseball upgrades. So I'm just curious, is this turf and baseball infield the one they're talking about at Palmer, or is that something else?
Through the chair to Councillor Glanders, similar to the pickleball court, specific locations for the proposed project have not been confirmed, and further assessment would be required.
Okay, so these don't necessarily have locations attached to them at all. Okay, so I have a third question, is I'm just not, okay, so 3 things on here. Well, one is rubberized, but there's 2 more synthetic turf fields. One's a sport field, one's an infield. And I just, like, I know, talking to the coaches in the sports community, they love the artificial turf because, they can play year round and not be affected by snow and not have to cancel things. And I know that's really important. But we have already really expanded a lot of our turf in Richmond. And I just know as a parent, when I was a parent of young children, I really didn't want them playing on turf because of the toxic chemicals that are in it's been proven that, soccer players that play on turf fields have higher incidences of thyroid cancers and blood cancers, especially goaltenders, because they're always on the ground. And my kid was always rolling on the ground, and then they come home covered in the rubber balls. And I actually pulled them out of soccer because of it, and did football at Steveston London instead, where they were playing on grass. And it was like any sport that used some of the grass, it was like, yes. So I don't want to lose much more of our grass personally. So I'm just not sure about 3 more synthetic turf fields being the #1 priority. So I don't know how other councils feel, but I would want to refer back on that and just maybe see if there's some other things that have priority. I'm really happy to see the covered lacrosse box in there. I think it's going to be an awesome, important, really well-used thing by many, many groups, including Tai Chi and other groups, as it's mentioned in the report. So I'm so happy to see that. I'm curious to hear what other councillors have to say.
Through the chair to Councillor Glanders, if I can add comment to your concerns, I guess, observations. With the latest technologies that we use, we are no longer using chrome rubber primarily. We go to a TPE product, which is a completely different polymer. It's cooler to use. There are no health effects. And as of today, all the standards and all the studies that we have followed, there are no adverse effects to date. That said, we are using different technologies that are just better for the environment, cleaner, and that is another big perk of an artificial field, is especially with the weather concerns we have right now, we're not having to do water or fertilization cultural aspects. So there's definitely pros and cons, and then the increased user and playability is a big factor.
For sure. Yeah, I agree with all that, and thanks for the update on the new materials. That's great to hear.
Good. Michael?
Thank you. Yes, a few questions for staff on this one. So I wasn't here the last time this process came forward. Richmond Sports Council in 2018, I guess, had a similar presentation to staff. And what I see in the beginning of the report here is that 89 local sport organizations were surveyed, 51 responded. And then before that, it does mention user groups. So my question is, how much do the user groups that are not tied to local sport organizations, how much influence do they have in these priorities?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the priority projects that have been identified in the report there, many of these are multi-use facilities that have opportunities for a variety of different sports and also provide opportunities for informal use. And so other users, community members, community groups would have the ability to access a number of these facilities and make use of them.
Yeah, follow up on that, then it does feel that some of the big ticket items here are very centralized as opposed to decentralized, because that's how Richmond is. There's communities all over. So when we're looking at that rank number 1, outdoor pickleball courts, and there'd be 9 of them, could we still see at the same time, like a parallel strategy, us putting in 9 somewhere, but also putting in 2 somewhere else and 3 somewhere else? Or would we have to break up this 9 to facilitate getting them elsewhere?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, 9 pickleball courts have currently been proposed as the priority project, but certainly other pickleball courts could be considered throughout the community.
Okay, and then to follow up on that, then those additional ones, they would be either direction from this committee or added at budget time?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, as new projects emerge, those are projects that then could be reviewed by staff, that could be assessed using the criteria that have been identified in the report, and should they be priorities, then they could be brought forward for further consideration.
Okay, thanks. Next question I have is related to the rank number 2 item, athletics, track and field facility. And it says it's a rubberized facility to support a number of amenities. Are we talking about like the floor, like in the Olympic Oval, the blue floor, like that kind of a rubberized flooring?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we would be, what we would recommend is a facility that is similar to what you see at Clement Track at Minaroo Park. So there's clear demand at that site through our track organizations and school district and through the public. So that's what we would be recommending.
Gotcha. Next question I have is, thankfully, I saw at the bottom of page 62 that East Richmond and Hamilton were given a special note, even though nothing is tied to sites yet. 3 of the 6 priority ones were listed as maybe could be considered for East Richmond and Hamilton. I think that's great because those areas do feel left out and lack the actual facilities in many ways. But what about the other 3 on the priority list that weren't considered? Why could the covered lacrosse box not be considered East Richmond, Hamilton? I get the Steveston London softball diamond needs to be at Steveston London. But what about the pickleball courts? Could have them or the lacrosse box not been considered out there too?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the recommendation that we have in the consideration for a covered lacrosse box would be to cover existing lacrosse boxes. Those 3 are at Steveston, Thompson, and Brighouse parks. So that was the thinking there. And then for the outdoor pickleball courts, if consideration needed to be given for locations, we would have to do site assessments and public consultation to choose those locations. If that was East Richmond, then we would look at that.
Great, yeah, as through the chair, as I'm aware of, the tennis courts in Hamilton, they're very slanted and only beginners would want to risk using those tennis courts.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, if I may, about the pickleball courts. Pickleball play does come with some significant noise concerns, and so location of those facilities would need to take that into consideration.
For sure, yeah, and the one I'm thinking of in Hamilton is quite, maybe nothing's far enough away, I don't know. But next one I wanted to ask about was actually I'll go back before I forget, the hockey. We've heard people saying, no, we're losing our hockey facilities. Nothing in here is adding just a simple lacrosse box, like an uncovered one, and there's even nothing in the future considerations. I'm not sure if the city tracks it, but the school district has had a number on their lands as well, and the one I spent hundreds, thousands maybe of hours on was just dug up last month at Tomset Elementary to put in a access road. And so I don't know if the sports, obviously the organized sports committees aren't going to know about that or care about that, because it would be used by father and son playing against a family, or people of all ages learning, developing, playing together. And we're losing those, which are really the tight-knit connections that people need to get to know their neighbors, that I got to know my neighbors and felt so comfortable in the city. And so, yeah, I think that's lost or not part of what the regional look at sport facilities are. I know this is not really meant to address that, and it's not addressing it. My last question relates to future consideration projects, the gymnastics center and the archery air gun facilities. So those both share a building right now on River Road West. Do we have a timeline for how long they can utilize those spaces?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the current lease agreement for both of those tenants at 7400 River Road is expiring in 2024, June of 2024. We have had initial conversations with both of those groups about their plans and needs moving forward, and we've committed to meeting with them again in September of 2023 to keep that conversation going, and so 2024, June.
Then maybe I'll wait till Councillor McNulty speaks, but I would be interested in moving those two up to the priority list. If we already know that the lease agreement is likely going to end next year, then that should be in the next 1 to 10 year timeframe, I would think.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, both of these sports, part of the conversation we've had with them are to assess different things in the community. So for instance, both of those sports have different provisions in the community, whether they're private or nonprofit. They have also, are both showing low growth and low participation. We also have talked to them about whether there are partnership opportunities or different funding opportunities for them moving forward. So those conversations are happening.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Bill?
Okay. Yeah, can I just ask a question on what you just finished? Why wouldn't we renew their lease for a year or two?
Go ahead.
Through the
What
chair.
is it that we don't know?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, the current lease has been set to expire as a result of plans for that particular property. We've had discussions about possibilities of extending that, but nothing has been confirmed at this particular point.
Okay, well, good answer. Yeah. Could I get a copy of the plans for that property so we know and council knows what the plans are before we say we're looking for something else for them? Because I might want to vote to extend their lease for a year or two while they're there, because the building is still there and they're set. So can we get that?
If I can add through the chair to Councillor McNulty, that is the current defined agreement right now with the lease. We are looking at doing a further extension. We were just having some conversations, consultation in relation to the park plan, and so those discussions are happening.
That's the answer I wanted. Thank you very much. Can I ask a couple of questions? Appreciate the report and work on it, but you talked to, and this can be done in a memo or whatever, 89 sport organizations. Could I have a list of those and have that circulated to committee? And could I have a list of those who responded and the person who responded to it? Okay, that thing. The reason I ask that is I belong to another association. They come to a meeting and I find it's a janitor that responded, no disrespect to the janitor of that organization, but giving us the information and has no quote unquote background or anything like that, was just told to do it. So I think it's important we know who, from where, and when those decisions are made. Just a couple of, so if we could get that in a memo, appreciate that very much. I noticed the framework and the weighting. I don't know what the weighting is, but when I look at some of the issues, again, I'm not, was this done by a consultant, the weighting and stuff like that, and was this done by you?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, the criteria were developed with input from the Facilities Task Force. A consultant was involved in the overall assessment, but that work was guided by staff. The input from the Facilities Task Force ultimately is what created the criteria.
I don't know what the weightings were, so I wished we had those in the report so we could weigh them a little bit better to know because I was a bit, to be quite frank with you, I was a bit surprised at what I saw. I was hoping I would see a timeline. I think Councillor Wolf referred to locations, timeline and locations and suggestions. You know, we could do, if you wish, an athletics track and field. At one time we wanted in the Garden City lands. Okay, well, we can do it at East Richmond and such. I thought that would have been very, very valuable. You did mention the covered lacrosse boxes, so we at least know what they are. And, that we are going to turf King George Park or something of that nature. So I would have appreciated that, and I think we should have that, because you didn't give us any next steps. Like, what is the most important thing if I had to give you $5 million today and talk these people into it, which you could do, what are we going to do? You know, let's say we had $5 million, $10 million, what are we going to do?
Through the chair to Councilor McNulty, with regards to next steps, each of the priority projects would require further assessment. That would include further refinement of the scope and the program for that project, site assessment, site selection, further refinement of the costing of that project, and of course, public consultation along the way. And then with that information on those, for each of those projects would then be brought back to council for consideration, whether that be through a capital submission or through an individual report as appropriate for that facility. In regards to the timeline for these projects, it is expected that the 6 priority projects would be able to move forward within the next 1 to 10 years, with council's endorsement of that list. It is expected that the number 1 priority project would be moving forward with a capital submission for 2022. 2024, thank you. My mistake. And I'd also note that in addition to these priority projects, staff will be moving forward with the community consultation for the Hugh Boyd Community Activity and Fieldhouse facility later this fall, to come back to council with a revised program early in 2024. And once that process is underway, we would expect that we would begin next steps on subsequent priorities within the list.
Okay. Well, I would maintain I could put 100 pickleball courts out there right now and they'd all be full. And, okay, we know it's the fastest growing sport in North America, and we're gonna hear about it from these folks on it. I've got, did we look at demographics and participation in terms of numbers?
Through the chair to Councilor McNulty, yes, demographics and participation levels are 2 of the criteria that were assessed for each of the projects.
We don't have those. I would hope that those would be appendices in your report. We don't have those. In terms of, for example, in the secondary list, no disrespect, but I did support the Richmond Tennis Club in getting their bubble. But when I look at that small group of 260 people, there's a hell of an investment coming down the road for them, and it's a private club. It's not a public club. If you said, I want the same amount of money for tennis courts and to fix up McLean Park and level it, and the tennis courts in Hamilton, you got the money. So, I'm kind of, and then I see all of a sudden wrestling mat came in out of nowhere. I guess the one thing I see missing on this, and I'll be very crass, having been written and helped write all the reports, is sports councils, everything from 1985 is not reflected here. The big ticket items are reflected, but sports council is not reflected. Upgrading of fields, building a change room, doing this, doing that. You mentioned the Hugh Boyd thing. I brought that forward. I won't say it's my project, it's our project, but I brought that forward, okay? As I did the artificial turf at Hugh Boyd and a few others. So some things are not, where does that fit? Did you look at that? Did you not get copies from the sporting group? I have all the documentation, if you wish, from day one, and I wondered, you know, they've got everything from cricket to curling. Curling's looked after, the dugout club, the rugby club. Were any of those looked at?
I believe, Councillor McNulty, that, or through the chair to Councillor McNulty, that some of those items you're referring to are what we would have considered and referred to in the report as some sort of more maintenance type of items that we have been working on with the individual clubs and working with Sports Council through them. If there are any in particular that we missed, it's an honest mistake. And we have been working through them and tried to highlight them in the report through many of the significant improvements that have been made with council's endorsement as we've moved along. And in regards to the wrestling facility, I would like to remind you that that was on the original list, as well as we did receive a direct referral from council to look at wrestling. It came forward through a delegation to the committee.
But I thought they were looked after by themselves. No. Okay, that should have been put in the report. Okay, that should have been, if you examined X, Y, and Z, then we should have had that in the report, because this is a public document now, and everybody's going to see this, or has seen it, and I think it's very important to deal with it when as I say, I look at these, and there are big ticket items. I look at demographics. I still think we need to address some demographics in here, and we haven't, and because I think we have to realize what's going on. The athletics facility, and like I said, I find all of a sudden a new track, and I know the issues better than any of you, but you know, here we're given the haves something already, and the have-nots are still not there. The little people is, in my opinion. So to me, it's very important on it. And as I said, with the for example, and I hit. Back in 1967 in Richmond, archery was a big thing. We had a huge archery club, okay? In 2023, I'd like to know how many archers we have. Not the same number we had back in 1967, I can tell you that right now. I'm being the devil here, and I've talked to the chair of the archery and the gun club and saying, you know, what do you need? And in terms of it, and how many butts do you need? And then we put it out in Mineral Park. That's where we dealt with. So and then I see $2 million. Okay, I just want to make sure about a needs assessment scoring. Okay, I also would like to have a memo in terms of the cost of the report. Okay, the cost of the consultants and what have you. I'd like to see that. If we could, and it can be confidential to committee. You were asking for endorsement. Does that mean that only these facilities will be considered and built?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, endorsement of the report and the priority projects would allow us to move forward with those priority projects that have been identified and are recommended to move forward in the next 1 to 10 years. Certainly other projects could emerge, whether that be through changes in the sport landscape, sport participation trends, other factors such as funding opportunities or partnerships that might impact any of the other items that are lower down on the list or newer items. And if that was the case, certainly staff would evaluate each of those projects in light of those factors and, if warranted, bring forward for further consideration.
Could I just make a clarification on that? It would give us direction from council on agreement on what those priorities are. I just want to make it clear that we would bring
every opportunity forward to you for further approval, whether it be through an independent report or through a capital budget. So it doesn't allow us to move forward without further approvals from you on each and individual project.
I just want to clarify, so you're referring to table 1, right?
And 2.
And 2?
To the chair, we are referring to table 1.
Only table 1, not table 2? What if we all of a sudden get a windfall and we can do table 2 before I'll guarantee you we'll do some of those before we do track.
And through the chair to Councilor McNulty, as funding opportunities arise or again, other factors change, certainly staff will continue to monitor each of these projects.
I would hope so, because 13 million. Could I request a formal, if it passes on Monday, formal letter be sent to Sports Council requesting their comments on the order and the report on it, even though some of them may have been there. All of Sports Council was not part of this in terms of seeing all this, okay? So I would request something back to them in a formal manner that they peruse this, and is this still where they are, or are they there with us? Okay, because you mentioned representatives, again, who is there? Was Mike Thorne there, for example, when we got archery in there, or was it Joe Smith, or was it Mary Jones? Who is there? So I would request that, not before Monday, obviously, or before, so it's back there, it's on the table, and they have their say, and they can make a response, because they've got whatever 40 bodies around the table in the same light to come back. So we are endorsing for consideration. So basically, we're approving it in principle.
We are, through the chair to Councilor McNulty, endorsement of the priority projects would allow staff to move forward with those projects in capital
For
planning.
consideration. They're not automatic, is what I'm trying to say. Right. I don't have to give you Monday night $13.5 million for track. You are going to look at it, come back, and it's for consideration.
Through the chair to Councilor McNulty, that's correct.
I want to check the wording as I got consideration in future corporate facility and park plan, as outlined by staff report. Okay, all right, thank you very much then. That's it for now.
Andy?
Thanks, and through the chair. Well, thanks for the report. It's my first time looking at one of these. So I get table 1, kind of for the 10-year plan. Each one will come back for approval. But does council get to review this every kind of 5 years? When do you, I know it's for 10 years, but when was the last time this came through? I thought it was about 5 years ago.
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, 2018 was when Sports Council brought forward the list.
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, to my knowledge, there hasn't been a list like this from a sport facility perspective. And so this is the first time that we've brought forward something like this. An analogy would be the 2016 to 2026 major facilities priority list that you have done for more major facilities. This is the first time, to my knowledge, that we've presented something like this.
Oh, okay, thanks. Well, I was pleased to see the lacrosse box in it, because I've had a lot of people in the community mention that, and I know more will come on that. Just a follow-up question on the turf fields replacing natural grass or replacing old turf fields. They are replacing natural grass, or are they a replacement for existing turf fields, or the addition to the existing number of turf fields?
Through the chair to Councilor McNulty, again, specific locations haven't been determined, and so through that site assessment and ultimately site location, that would need to be determined. It is possible that an existing field would be replaced with a synthetic turf field through that process.
Okay, because that's an interesting point about sports and athletics. I mean, even with the Nations Cup, the final was played on the natural grass field because that's a preference. Obviously, you can't use them year round. We all know the advantages to turf fields. So the question is, do we have an idea, a policy, or a plan as to what our ratio should be for natural grass fields, or maybe based on their location, or a combination at certain places like at Boyd? Do we have like a plan in mind? We don't want to go to all artificial turf, right? But there's reasons why they exist. So is there a plan or a policy on the ratio we'd have going forward?
You know, through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, I'm unaware of a specific plan in regards to the ratio of grass fields to synthetic turf fields. I can say, however, that the complement of existing synthetic turf fields was one that was reviewed through this process, and with other factors such as the number of participants and sport organizations that would make use of that facility, the benefits, as you've spoken to, of extended hours of play all throughout the week, throughout the year, that emerged as a priority project for that, for all those benefits.
Sure. I think as long as going forward, we have it in mind that there are great advantages to natural turf as well, and actually it's preferred by a lot of people for when they play. So as long as we're keeping that in mind and prioritize them as well when we can. Thank you.
Laura?
Thank you. Just a couple more comments and a question. I didn't comment on the Steveston London Field softball diamond, but I was also really happy to see that because I was at the U13 girls' big, huge BC-wide championships at that a few weeks ago, and I was talking to the softball people there, telling me that this is something they've been working on with the city and hoping to do, and I believe that they have money or something to contribute to it as well. And I can't remember if he said that or not. And it might also with the covered lacrosse box. I know that there's somebody who builds them like in our community or something, and they're looking for partnerships with you as well. So when you mentioned the partnerships thing, that it could change the priority list, I just wanted to know what that would look like. In that, so if it seems feasible that you got the construction people there that are specialized in this type of facility, and there's some community partnership going on, that we could build item 4 and item 6 before this big athletic track and field facility, even though the athletic track and field facility is higher on the list, because and you would just come to us with that in possibly when we have our capital budget review in the fall, where you have a list of sort of green lighted projects. They would all be on there, and you'd say not recommended for this year, but recommended, and that at that time we could say, actually, can you do this one instead, kind of thing.
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, obviously the scope of each facility is different. The considerations required for each facility is different. Should the prioritized list be endorsed by council, staff would then move forward with incorporating each of those into park and facility capital planning. And so certainly something, item number 6 on the list could come forward ahead of item number 2 based on those particular plans. And so staff would work with in those plans to develop those specific timelines for each project.
Yeah, that's great, that they don't all just have to line up after one's finished, we can start the next, but there's different avenues to get the most built as quick as possible. Thank you.
Okay. So, no further questions? There's a staff recommendation. Do you have a mover? Move. Second. No further discussion. So call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Next one, manager's report.
I just wanted to remind everybody that the Grand Prix of Art is taking place in Steveston this weekend. There'll be 35 artists painting throughout Steveston Village between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. The award ceremony will be at Britannia Shipyards at 2:30, and the art will be on display in the same net loft Saturday afternoon and throughout the day on Sunday.
Okay, another one?
Good afternoon. I have 2 updates for you today. The Life Saving Society's National Drowning Prevention Week is currently underway from July 16th through the 22nd. The city has several initiatives to promote the week and highlight ways to have fun and make memories while staying safe around the water. In addition to posters and information booths to educate the public about water safety, we are offering a series of free Swim to Survive sessions offered at each of our 4 pools for children's ages 6 and up and their families to learn the basic skills needed to survive an unexpected fall into deep water. My second update is related to Pride Week in Richmond, which is coming up July 31st through August 6th. and demonstrates the city's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. This city, in partnership with our community associations and societies, is offering a variety of programs and events at arts and culture, recreation, and parks facilities across the city, as well as Richmond Public Library's locations. In addition, a pride flag will be displayed at City Hall during the week as a symbol of support and allyship with 2S LGBTQI+ communities. Pride Week activities will be promoted through the city's website at richmond.ca/pride, community services, e-newsletter, through social media posts, and a news release.
Good, thank you. Oh, Michael.
There's no more staff, okay. Thanks, through the chair, this is just to maybe general staff, or if someone could comment if they know the answer, or could come in a memo. I didn't myself attend the fireworks for Canada Day, but I know a number of people who did, and they were saying it was fantastic. But they thought that it would have cost the city a lot to do it, and they were concerned that there actually wasn't that much turnout. Do we have numbers, statistics on that? And I don't know if anyone can comment now.
Marie?
We're just in the, sorry, through the chair to Councillor Wolf, we are just in the process of debriefing with the Salmon Festival, all the organizers, and so don't have the final numbers yet. It's always an estimate when we look at crowds like that. I think observationally what we heard is that it was quite well attended and the boardwalk was quite full, so it might have depended on where they were located.
For sure. So there will be a report coming that will have the highlights?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Wolf. When we come forward with our 2024 event program, we do a summary of all the 2023 events.
Andy?
Just a quick comment. Yeah, I was there and down on the boardwalk and done a number of public order events in the past, and yeah, it was packed. So I don't know what the final number will be, and it'll be hard to do in that location because you can't really grid it out, but it was packed. And it was spectacular too, the show.
Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.